So it is 8:30 a.m. and I will call to order the council meeting of May 30th. We have an agenda in front of us. There are a deletion and 2 additions that I know of. So 3.2 and 8.2, the Huxley Community Association will not be coming today, so we're removing those. And then the additions are in closed session. So third-party business section 16 and local public body confidence section 23, 2 additions in closed. Sorry, Councillor Cunningham, you have one?
I would like an addition to council committee reports for Marigold Library, Kneehill Housing, and Police Advisory Committee, please.
Okay, so you want to repeat your list again?
Yes, I sure will. So Marigold Library,
Marigold,
Kneehill Housing,
Kneehill Housing,
and Police Advisory Committee.
Police Advisory.
Thank you.
Okay, so we have 9.1, which will be the Marigold Library, 9.2, which will be Kneehill Housing, and 9.3, Police Advisory Committee. Those are 3 very quick additions. Any other additions to the agenda? Councillor Christie.
If not, I'll move the agenda as amended.
Okay, so we have a motion to approve the agenda as amended. All those in favor? And that's carried unanimously. Thank you. Okay, the first order of business is, after that, is our regular council meeting minutes of May 9th. Are there any corrections that need to be made? If not, Councillor Penner.
I make the motion that we approve the minutes from the May 9th, 2023 council meeting.
Thank you. So we have a motion to approve the minutes of the May 9th regular council meeting. All those in favor? And that is also carried unanimously. Thank you. First up in our order of business this morning is a delegation on the part of FCSS. And we have the pleasure of having their director, Shelley Jackson-Berry, with us today. And Shelley, welcome. As I warned you earlier, you don't have the lenient chairman that you normally would see. You have that guy. You have that guy who comes to FCSS all the time, and but anyway.
Who is used to.
It's all right, you got the rest of council to back you.
Thank you.
You're quite welcome. So whenever you're ready, we'll be more than happy to hear from you.
I need to see a clock because I know I only have 15 minutes.
If you get carried away and we get tired, we'll let you know.
Okay. Thank you.
In the meantime, we're more than ready to hear from you.
Well, thank you very much for this opportunity. I just want to start informally by saying thank you guys so much for the nomination and for the Queen's Platinum Jubilee Medal. I apologize for my cutting off the wreath and being so rude, because it is now today that I am here to share the Kneehill Regional FCSS report, but he freaked me out a little bit. So, and
Surprise.
me not knowing what to say. So anyways, can we switch to the report one? The longer one? Oh, it's not, oh, I didn't send it? Oh my goodness me. I am incompetent. I thought I sent, so I'm going old school and we'll have to pass around hard copies. I apologize. I thought I attached it. So we're going old school, which tends to be my favorite place. So I apologize sincerely for that. And I will send it electronically so you have it so that you can shred your, your hard copy of that report or give it to a friend. Just starting out, so as you guys are all well aware, FCSSs across the province are a partnership between municipal government and provincial government. And to access the funding from the province, you need to put in at least 25, so it's a 75-25 share. So in 2022, the Kneehill municipalities, so the 6 municipalities actually contributed 40% instead of the 25%. So you're required, so the amount from the province is the 300, on the financial report on page 2, is the 350,391. You guys contributed 142,800, and your actual required amount is 87,598. So a huge increase. So that includes the extra $30,000 that the municipalities contributed for the report that Carolyn has up there, that's specifically for the Kneehill Community Support Coach. So a huge increase in the provincial 23-24 budget. It was designated for FCSSs provincially to get an extra $5 million. We received notification on April 5th that they would be amending our contract. Unfortunately, we haven't had a follow through as to what that actually means for Kneehill Regional FCSS. So the minute we know that, Deputy Reeve King will certainly be having that information and can share it along. Some municipalities across the province are a bit nervous about that because they only put in that minimum amount. You guys are good as gold. They could give us quite a bit of money and you would not have to increase your funding whatsoever. So we are set that way. FCSS is part of the reason I'm quite passionate about them is they get to be locally driven. So it's not about federal, it's not provincial, but the local municipalities get to drive that and really look at what are the preventive factors that they can put in place to enhance the social well-being of all of their residents, birth to death. So that is one of the things that has worked so well for FCSSs, I believe, because you guys are much closer to your community and your residents and have a much better idea of how best to serve them. So in December of 2022, the provincial government has created an FCSS accountability framework, and Deputy Reeve King might have shared this already. So it's a document, and I fully believe we do good work, and so that we certainly can meet the criteria of the accountability framework. One of the things that the province is doing is attaching our funding agreement, which is a 3-year funding agreement, to their, they will communicate their provincial preventive strategies to FCSS programs, and then those will be in connection with the grant. They weren't given to us till after the grant had to be signed this year, but their priorities are homelessness and housing insecurity, mental health addictions, employment, family and sexual violence across the lifespans, and aging within a aging in a community. So those are now overlapped with our local initiatives and priorities, and I'm confident that we can make the fine work that the FCSS staff does work within those priorities. But it is a bit of a change that we will be seeing going forward, is making those two overlay. So on page 2 at the top are just some of the highlights of more of our outputs. So one of the things is, there's many numbers there, and apologize you didn't get to study them ahead of time. Information and referral is one of the numbers you will see there, that in 2022, we had 292 different referrals, and we have been seeing a steady increase of that over the years. Excuse me. I.e. back in what year was that? About 5 years ago, we only had 177. So I think that that points that really slowly, it's hard when you're a regional program to make sure everyone knows how to reach Kneehill Regional FCSS, but I think slowly we're really starting to see that increase, that people know to reach out to Kneehill Regional FCSS to get connected to the to those social well-being programs that they would have access to. We do get a lot of phone calls from Kneehill County, and we don't count that. We just give them the right number. Another number you'll see on there is our Community Volunteer Income Tax Program. This, again, has had a real steady increase. So this is volunteers completing a basic income tax return for low-income individuals, and that would be, there's no criteria of age or anything like that. It just needs to be a basic income tax return. So in 2022, we've seen that, 259. So we've already run through the main part of our tax program this year, and so far we've already completed 313. And so every year we're just seeing this is increasing, so the need is there. And the other thing that we track, and then we share it provincially, is the benefits, the financial benefits that people access by getting their taxes. We know so many of those, they do not get them unless they have their tax return completed, as well as we don't track, but we know that it's important to access different services and supports as well. I.e. Kneehill Housing is one, right? Because they are subsidized, so they need to have those things. So anyway, so of the 213, now I'm talking 2023, so far already the benefits have been over $2,236,000 that have come to those recipients. So that's a variety of programs, but they do need to access, they do need to send in that tax return to access them. So it does make a difference. Tools for School is around the numbers that we always fund. We have people leave, but we have people come in. So it just seems we're always around that 50-ish, that number. Our Family Wellness Worker Program is there, and as you can see, the two staff worked one-on-one, and again, we would say that those are ongoing, so not just a single session, but with 137 case residents, depending on age. Sometimes they're adults, sometimes they're children. Most of them are probably 5 to 18 that they're working with. And then 86 single sessions. So those would be ones who come in with an issue, they do that real solution focused, and hopefully they walk away with the skills and supports that they need. So again, that was a higher number than we've been seeing, but that connects with some of our trends around that mental health and addictions that we're seeing. Our Kneehill Family Marriage Counseling Program, so it had 39 cases, and that again is pretty standard since it's always around 40-ish since we had to cut that program because of some loss of funding from the Alberta government that helped contribute to that. So it doesn't run, it used to be there 52 times a year, and the numbers are down a bit there. So if we move on to outcomes, I'm scared of, outcomes. So it's really important that we don't just talk about outputs. Those are important numbers. We want to know how many people we're supporting, but so what? What differences are we making? And so we break them into three kind of categories. So one is individuals. And so you'll see that on page 4. And so one of the things that research tells us, and I think the pandemic told us, is social connection and feeling socially supported really enhances our quality of life. And so that's one of the things that we often measure in a number of our programs, that people are feeling that program helps them connect to their community, connect to other organizations, and feel supported. And so our information says 99% of the people that we surveyed, which was about a 208 response, were saying that yes, this is making a difference. So again, we know that that enhances to social well-being. We measure a number, because some programs are very specific. They are here to enhance resilience or meaning and purpose, right? So we measure those individually, and again, we put them all in one category under, in personal competence, but we're around 94%. For us, 80% is a passing mark. So we are quite pleased with these results. That does not mean that we will not be working to improve and make sure that we are, even if we do worry about the 5, 8, 10%. What are we missing that could better support residents in our Kneehill area? Families is the next one that we measured. And again, we were looking specifically around communication and parenting. Again, it's two areas that parents are often looking for some support in. So, so what we measured there is that people were feeling they enhanced their communication and parenting skills, and it was with a 98% success rate there. And then the last one that we measure is community. So those are the three main areas: individuals, families, and communities. And so stronger community connections and connection to community resource is a huge importance. So if the sooner people know how to access the supports that they need, we know that the less damaging that can be, and for them to enhance their social well-being. So that's really important to us. So those are some of the things we measure. And again, we also see part of our job is lots of agencies serve our area, but they are regional. So they are in Drumheller or Olds or Red Deer or Calgary or Airdrie. So we feel it's really part of our role to make sure they understand our area and they understand our residents. And so we spend a lot of time trying to enhance that, and that's what fits under this one as well. I think I'm cruising on my time, but if I can mention a few trends that we are seeing. Some of them are listed on that very first page in the executive summary. So anxiety, stress, mental health. I probably don't need to go into detail on that. You guys are very familiar with what is happening. And this is happening much bigger than just the Kneehill area, but we're certainly seeing the impacts in this area, and we're seeing it for all ages. It's not just specifically children and youth or families. We're seeing it across the mark. So just some of the things that we've been really trying to do. So the Kneehill Community Support Coach is one of the things, thanks to all the municipalities' increased support and some funding from Golden Hill School Division and the FCSS reserves. We are able to hire a full-time position that we're really trying to target mental health and overall that well-being for children and youth. And from the report that that you got to study before, you can see that we're starting to make a real difference on things like self-esteem and resiliency and interpersonal skills. So we also were involved with the Rural Mental Health Project. A number of years ago, the provincial government gave Canadian Mental Health a lump sum of money to support mental health in rural Alberta, because they were hearing over and over and over again. So for us, this isn't a new issue. Mental health in rural Alberta and accessing services has been an ongoing struggle for years. So we do have animators in 6 of the communities, and they're all volunteers, and we're doing our best to support them to help connect in their community to see how they can best support mental health. Unfortunately, the money that they can access now that they're trained can't go to hire a therapist or hire someone who provides a direct service. But hopefully we can at the very least reduce some stigma and increase some awareness around rural mental health in our area. So we do have someone in Wimborne, Lois Benedict, who is an animator who kind of covers that area. So yes. Our family wellness workers constantly working on this as well, and then we're certainly trying to do things through parenting programs like Fear Less, and then programs like Anxiety to Calm and Happiness Basics. So we're trying to come at it from a number of different ways. Centralization, I think I mentioned last year, we're just seeing a lot of the provincial services that to access them you need to call a central intake number. And so the good news is the wait time. I think when I was here last year, I was telling you about people who were trying to access mental health services and they were on hold for 5 to 6 hours. So they're better. The wait time isn't as long. We still need to really prep people when they go to understand that once they get through, the actual intake now isn't face to face. Sorry, that's the word I'm looking for. But it is over the phone and takes an hour. And so we're just really supporting them because a lot of times we're used to being able to phone, make an appointment, and then sit down across from Mr. Christie and do that assessment. Oh, you don't want to do that. So we're seeing the wait time come down. One of the things that we are struggling with, and again, we'll take on that responsibility, is trying to educate them more about what's available. Because sometimes if it doesn't meet their service, they don't have a good understanding of how other ways we can support people in the Kneehill area. So that's happening. Volunteerism, we are, as you've seen in the stats, the numbers are up over last year, which is a good thing, but across the board we're hearing that more volunteers are needed and it's harder to get people out. So, and nationally, as they do surveys across Canada, 67% of organizations are reporting that they're really struggling accessing volunteers, and really struggling access volunteers who don't want just a one-hit wonder. So to sit on that board. So some of those ongoing commitments. So through Volunteer Kneehill and Angie's amazing work by sending out newsletters and all those sorts of things, we're trying to support that with volunteer forums and things, but it's an ongoing job for sure. And I'm sure you guys are seeing that with some of your community groups as well. Emergency financial support advocating. I think Deputy Reeve King has probably talked quite a bit about this one. As of June 3rd, the provincial government changed how they're able to access financial benefits, and it is a real struggle. And so they consistently would refer people back to FCSS to speak to their social worker. We don't have a social worker, but we are doing our very best. In the outputs, we did talk about 19 emergency financial support applications and advocacy cases. And I know that might not seem like very many, but one of the cases that I worked on, it took us 3 months. So it's an ongoing, and they aren't just instant things. And when you don't have access to phone and computer, and then you have a small window of opportunity to get back to the province, and so they need to somehow get to us to check their emails or whatever that looks like. Sometimes they miss those deadlines, and then we're supporting them to start back at stage 1. So anyways, there have been some improvements, and we are doing our best however we can to support our residents who have these struggles, because FCSS cannot fund individuals financially as part of our funding agreement with the province. That's not part of our mandate. And I mean, I sincerely appreciate the board. Kneehill Regional FCSS board has really worked hard on this one. And Deputy Reeve King is certainly one who has spent time with MLA Cooper, and I believe the minister as well, so has spent some time really trying to advocate for that, which we sincerely appreciate. But just sometimes there's a difference between the larger centers and being able to access, and then in rural Alberta. So we will continue to work on that. And as I said, the board has done amazing things and has really supported us as they see me frustrated and angry in board meetings. So I really appreciate that. So I could go on, and I did send a special report specifically to the $30,000 the municipalities contributed to support children and youth and their families in the Kneehill area. So Michaela is doing great things. You know that, because you had a presentation, which I thought that's all we were here for. Anyway, so I won't go on about that one, but we did send a summary of that if you have some questions or concerns about that. So thank you for that. I think just in closing, I will say it is such a pleasure to work with 6 municipalities who truly want to support the social emotional well-being of all their residents, and working for a board who works so well together to support. They don't care if the resident lives in Kneehill County or Trochu or Three Hills. They work so well to support everyone because they believe that that is the best way to support people. So it is so good to work with them. And you will be receiving an invitation to our 25th anniversary celebration, which is this year, 25 years since the municipalities created this program. So anyways, I can't even look at the time. Sorry.
Hey, you didn't get the hook, you know, or anything like that?
I'm so sorry. I could go on.
And 25 years of you actively promoting and advocating for FCSS in this area. So we have to thank you for that as well. So it's not just the board people and your staff, but it's also pretty energetic and actively involved director, and we do appreciate that as well. So
Thank you.
yeah. So are there any questions? Anybody have a specific question? Mr. Christie.
Just a comment, you've only reached 1 in 3 in our community, and the best advertising you got is a positive outcome from those people telling other people, so that's extremely impressive. So thank you for that. Like, that's a third of the people in our community that you've affected.
Wow.
So that's extremely impressive.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you.
Councillor Cunningham.
Okay, I have a few comments. I'll try to keep it short, but thanks, Shelley, to you and your staff for all that you do. I think it's important for people to be aware that you folks are running on 2 family wellness workers in the area as opposed to traditionally having 3, correct?
That's correct.
Right, okay. And I'm sure you're well aware of this, but you are correct. Deputy Reeve King is a huge advocate, and we've seen him go into the bear pit, we call it, at the rural municipalities and advocate for FCSS. So he's great to have on your side, of course, and I think all of us around the table. It'll be interesting with, now we know where our government is for the next 4 years, to see where this goes. I have to giggle because back in the day when I worked in the department, we did home visits, and now it frightens me that it's a 5 to 6 hour wait for people on the phone. So yeah, that's not good. So I think we want to keep advocating for this program. We know there's been changes to victim services where it's now going more urban based, and I think we all want to make sure that FCSS stays rural focused. So yeah, so thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Or Councillor Penner. I'm going to promote you. I got promoted, you get promoted.
Thanks, Shelley, for everything you do and your team there. And it's great to see that people are taking advantage of the income tax program, because it is so true. There's so much money that doesn't come back to you because they don't complete their income tax returns. And we promote that a lot, just please, because you have to complete that in order to get be able to access any of those programs. But we just got back from the FCM conference, and homelessness and cost of housing is a huge issue across the country. There's a lot of new residents coming to the country, immigrants and whatnot else, and but it's heard right across the country, and it's something we're going to be talking about for some time. Yes, it's different from the cities to the rural, but it still affects us all. So it was a topic that was spoken about at many sessions for the whole countrywide. So, yeah. But thank you for your team and everything you guys do.
Thank you.
Okay, well, if there's no further questions, we just have to say thank you again, Shelley. It's always a pleasure to have you here, and in spite of what I might imply otherwise, it is a joy to work with you, and so you are appreciated within our communities, and the work that FCSS is doing is very important, and we're thankful to have an update today, and we're grateful. So keep up the work, and just make sure your staff knows that Kneehill County is on your side, and we're very supportive of what you're doing. So thank you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the time, the extra time, and the support. It means a lot to have that support from the municipalities. So that's great. And I promise I will go right back to the office and email Carolyn the full report so you can shred your paper one.
Thank you for being here. After that exciting report, we get to move on to things like policy review. So we'll move on in our agenda to 4.1, policy review, transportation and hamlets. And Mr. Zier, that is a very difficult act to follow. However, I'm sure you're up to the challenge.
I will, good morning, council. I'll try and add a little pizzazz to my presentation here, but definitely a hard act to follow with Ms. Jackson there. So yes, we will, you see in your agenda package 4.1 is the policy review for transportation and hamlets. So this is the bringing back the recommended council motion from the recommendation from the Committee of the Whole. These policies, all 4 of them were presented to the Committee of the Whole at the last meeting. We had good fruitful discussion about the changes that were made there, and this is the bring forward recommendation to council on approving those changes. So you'll see that in the recommended motion for both policy 1315 and 1339, the amendments to that, as well as removing policies 9.2 and 1340. So just some background. These 9.2 is the Hamlet approach policy. 13.15 is the approach construction guidelines. 1339 and 1340 are both undeveloped road construction guidelines. So some key changes to these were actually removing 9.2 in total. It was one Hamlet policy that was pretty short. We were just able to incorporate that into the overall 1315 policy for approach construction. The removal of the county's obligation to construct policies at the county's expense and putting it back on the landowners, which is typical of where the county's going with user pay and single benefiting improvements, putting back to the landowners. We've also changed limitations on the number of approaches per quarter section, just limiting them more to 2 per quarter, and if it's adjoining Range Road and Township, you're allowed to have 2 on each of one of those adjoining roads. As well, the merger of, so going on to the undeveloped road allowances, there's the policy 1330 and 1340, 1339 and 1340, which are the construction of the undeveloped road allowances, bringing them into one singular policy and just clarifying some of the procedures around that. So, like I said, this was discussed in Committee of the Whole, but I'm definitely able to answer any questions that council may have on these policies.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Zier. Are there any questions from council? I know we had a larger discussion at the Committee of the Whole regarding these changes. However, if there are questions or clarification that's needed, now would be the time. It looks like you're going to get away fairly unscathed. So basically, we're going to end up with 2 policies, approach construction guidelines and undeveloped road construction guidelines. That's where we're going to end up.
That's correct, yes.
Okay. So then if there are no questions, then what we need would be a motion to Councillor Cunningham.
I move that council approves the amendments to policy 13-15 and 13-39 and the rescinding of policies 9.2 and 13-40 as presented.
Okay. Excuse me. Thank you. Any further discussion, questions? I don't see any, so I'm going to ask the question. All those in favor? And that is carried unanimously. Thank you. We're moving on to 4.2, Capital Equipment Plan Pre-authorization. And we're passing the torch from Mike to Mike. Mr. Conklin, welcome.
Thank you. Here today for the capital equipment pre-authorization. Administration is looking to, or is requesting a pre-authorization to purchase a specific capital equipment prior to the budget being approved. The equipment has been scheduled for procurement based on the life expectancy with strategy, with considerations to the initial cost, repairs, maintenance, as well as the expected disposal revenue. With the pre-authorization, we'd be ordering 2 24 Class 8 highway trucks and 1 25 Class 8 highway trucks. With ordering these tractors in 2023, we would have a greater likelihood of meeting our delivery date of spring 2024 and spring of 2025. The equipment will be funded through the capital equipment reserve, and the recommended motion would be that council approves the expenditure of up to $850,000 from the capital equipment replacement reserve to fund the purchase of 3 Class 8 highway tractors for delivery in 2024 and 2025.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Conkin. Are there any questions from council? Councilor Christie.
Curiosity more than anything, what kind of mileage do we get on each truck each year roughly?
Each year, I am not 100% sure. We'd have to look into that. Usually when they go to auction, they have somewhere around that $500,000 to $600,000 is what we usually have been getting rid of them at.
Okay, that was kind of the number I was looking for anyway, so thank you for that.
So my assumption would be is we're still experiencing the same delivery delays that we've seen on other pieces of equipment, and so in order to hopefully have in place the new equipment required to replace the existing on the dates of expiry, we're going to pre-order in advance.
Yeah, the delivery or the order board for 24 trucks is still not even opened, and then it usually, from what we've been hearing, it's about a year out from once they're on the order board. It's usually about a year till they're showing up at the factory there, or the dealerships, sorry.
Okay. Any other questions? Councillor Phobes.
Once you order these, will the price be locked in, or will we see an increase down the road?
As far as I know, they are locked in for 2024. 2025, I'm not 100% sure on. So 2024s will be locked in at that.
Yes, Mr. Zier, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, through the chair. Mr. Conk is correct. We have locked in 2024 pricing for these. Clarification is still needed on 25, and we will have that before we order it, as well as cancellation policies. If we do have a bump up in the delivery dates on these, we want to make sure that we can either come back to council for an extension on that for the purchase of them, or just delaying the delivery date on those as well. So.
Okay. Any other questions? Councillor Cunningham.
Maybe somebody else can remind me, but I'm not sure if I have seen a copy of the capital equipment plan. If it's somewhere, please let me know, and if it's not, I would love to have a copy of that for myself and for some ratepayers that are asking.
Okay, thank you for that. Do you want to make a comment? Mr. Hogan?
Just to confirm that we can put that together and send it out.
Okay. Usually in the budgeting process, we do see capital equipment plan as it relates to the specific year that we're in, and generally we have an idea of the overall plan, but it doesn't. To get the specific plan is probably beneficial. Councillor Penner.
And I think it's unfortunate, you know, we've got to book any of this equipment so far ahead, and it's no different than on the farm. We're having to do it too, and then they're telling us that the price of any of the metal equipment is not coming down for some time. The lumber and all that kind of stuff has come down, but they're saying that, you know, so I'm looking forward to the day when price of machinery has come down, not just for personally, but for the county too. These are huge expenses, and it's just mind-boggling that we have to book, you know, to 2020 for 2025 pieces of equipment.
This is kind of the new way of holding us for ransom. If you want this, you have to pay for it now. Go ahead, Mr. Christie.
Well, and I have 2 pieces that I've had for a year that still aren't complete, that I still don't have some of the software for. So even on the new stuff, we're not getting what they tell us we're gonna get.
Thank you for that. Are there any other comments or questions? If not, we've been requested to approve this expenditure, and so we would need a motion to make that official. Councillor Christie.
I'll move to approve the expenditure of $850,000, makes me boggle my mind, from the capital equipment reserve to fund the purchase of 3 Class 8 highway tractors for delivery in 2024 and 2025.
Okay, and just by way of clarification, that's 2 for 24 and 1 for 25.
Correct, yep.
Okay. Are there any other questions or clarification? I don't see any, so I'm going to ask the question. All those in favor of the motion to approve? And that is carried unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Conkin.
Thanks.
All right, we're going then to move on to 5.1 planning. And we're going to do 5.1.1 MDP Engagement Communication Plan. And welcome, Ms. Hazelton.
Thank you. This morning I had a sidekick, but oh, here she comes. Excellent.
Ms. Anderson, welcome. You now have your sidekick and
I do.
you're ready to
so
roll.
now we can get going. Perfect. Thank you.
So whenever you're ready.
Thanks. So council, as you are well aware, you have approved a larger engagement for the municipal development plan. So we have a working style group of review where a maximum of 3 councillors, 2 members at large, meet to discuss a particular section of the document. You have appointed those members at large. We actually have had our first meeting so far, and I think the first round is scheduled completely now for all of the working groups. And we want to make sure that they're willing to meet in a minimum of 3 half-day sessions, and so far that's been what everybody's agreed to. And then following that, we will have round 1 of a public engagement, which we will do an introduction to the municipal development plan. We are going to be hosting 2 supper working meetings, one in the north and one in the south. So we have one scheduled at Trochu and one in Acme. And then we will later do a round 2, very similar forum in Trochu and Acme for a working supper. And then we will have round 3 where we will have a draft document in place. We want to go back and say, this is what we heard, this is what we're seeing, and we will fit in that other round with our sector groups prior to that as well. So we have included a timeline. Christine has been great enough to do the communication plan, which you see attached, and we have dates set already for all of these public engagements. We have the caterer has been booked and the halls are booked as well. So we are anticipating that we will release an opportunity. People will have to RSVP so that we can do appropriate numbers for the supper. But we will release forms that they can do that online. But you will see a list of the dates in the discussion. So if there's any questions regarding that or regarding the plan itself, Christine has put together a timeline at the very end, which is just a quick, easy format of how we're looking for this to play out. And then we're looking to have more of that draft document in the spring.
Okay, thank you. So are there any questions or comments? I have one. So the timeline and some of the stuff that has been put together, is that going to be on the website for people to see and access so they're aware of the process that we're in and how they can play a part?
Yes, actually, that website is ready to go. I just wanted to wait for your approval today, and then I'll hit play, and then
You need to, sorry. There you go, you're on.
Sorry. Yes, the website's all ready to go. Once we get approval this morning, or if we do, I'll just hit play, and it'll have everything on it that people need to know.
Okay, good, thank you. Any other questions? Councillor Forbes.
Just a couple and I can't tell you exactly where I read it, but the word farm, solar farms, I do not like the word farm and solar together in the same sentence.
I don't think it's in this. Oh,
Oh,
down here.
yes, yep.
Okay,
I think it's important to note that this council has a very strong opinion on wording of farms as it relates to energy developments, and I think that we need to recognize that they're really not farms anymore, but they've changed to a commercial endeavor.
Yeah.
So,
we'll change it to solar generation facility, sorry, didn't catch that.
Councillor Phobes is taking over my place of catching those kind of things. So thank you. Any other questions or comments? Councillor Penner?
I echo the same feeling, and thank you. This is awesome. We've brought these forward, and I look forward to the website and what else, and it's giving our residents the opportunity to participate at multiple occasions. So it's great we're putting this out there. We should not be hearing back from them that they've had no opportunity to have input. So I think this is awesome.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Not seeing any. I think it's important for us to acknowledge the work that's gone into this and to say thank you. It is appreciated, and I know planning is picking up a lot of the work here, but Christine, the efforts that you're putting in on the communication side, that's very important as well, and so we acknowledge that. So thank you to both of you, and it's up to us, I guess, to either approve or decide to, we've sort of said we're doing this, so I guess we need to just make that official. So, Councillor Cunningham.
Yeah, I just want to reiterate what Councillor Penner said. Yeah, this engagement that we're doing, I love it on behalf of council and administration, so it's wonderful. So I will move that council approve the Municipal Development Plan Engagement Communications Plan as presented.
Okay. So we have a motion to approve the Municipal Development Plan Engagement Communications Plan. It's quite a mouthful, as presented. Are there any other discussion or comment? Yes, yes. I think they took note of our amendment.
Yeah.
So. Okay. Seeing no further discussion, I'm going to ask the question. All in favor of the motion to approve? And that is carried unanimously. And again, thank you. Appreciate the work that's being done, and so just want you to know that. So.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so now we are going to move on to 5.1.2 subdivision extension on KNE 220178. Ms. Hay Morgan, Brandy, welcome.
Good morning. I'm bringing to you a subdivision extension relating to a portion of the Northeast 15, 3322 west of the 4th. Landowners are given a year from the date of approval in which to meet the conditions of their approval. If the conditions are met, the subdivision approving authority is required to endorse the subdivision to allow registration at land titles. There are numerous conditions left with this specific subdivision prior to endorsement. Therefore, an extension is required for the file for the applicant to finalize the conditions set out in the approval that was May 26, 2022. This is the first extension for this file. We are requesting the extension deadline fall on Monday, May 27th, 2024, as May 26th of 2024 is a Sunday. Section 65746 of the MGA permits councils to extend the one-year approval period of whether or not the period has expired. There are no limits set in the MGA for either the number of extensions or the length of time an extension can be granted for. Landowners may make the request for the extension of the time frame from the council. Requests for extension to subdivision approvals can only be approved by council. And that is it.
That is it. Thank you. Are there any questions? Councillor Phobes.
I just noticed that the reason for the extension was they're working on items,
That's
particular
the
items.
conditions. She just called them items, but they're
Oh,
the
okay.
conditions.
For condition.
Yeah.
So still working to meet the conditions of the subdivision as
Yeah.
originally approved. Yep.
Yeah.
Could be numerous, could be one or two.
It is numerous, yes.
Any other questions? If not, what is the wish of council? Councillor Phobes.
That council grant a one-year extension to KNE 220178 until May 27th of 2024.
Okay, thank you. So we have a motion to approve or grant a one-year extension to KNE 220178 with the date being May 27th, 2024. Any further comment or questions? Seeing none, I'll ask the question. All those in favor? And that is also approved unanimously. Thank you, Brandy. Appreciate your time. Okay, we are now going to move into 5.1.3, information regarding an AUC hearing, and welcome back, Ms. Hazelton.
Thank you. We're just looking to formalize what council has directed administration to do regarding the participation in renewable energy projects that are applied for within Kneehill County. So on April 25th, 2023, council directed administration to submit a statement of intent to participate in any and all renewable energy projects that are applied for in Kneehill County. Council specifically noted the following concerns: the high quality of agricultural land that is being removed from production for renewable energy projects, the concern with who will ultimately be responsible for reclamation and end of life if the applicant becomes insolvent, lack of current legislation and requirements for security may leave a landowner unprotected, weeds, pest control and disease transfer, and timing of the construction and potential for erosion of lands. During the May 16th Committee of the Whole meeting, council further directed that they did not want to participate in the full hearing, which would entail retaining experts to represent and write reports to back up each of the concerns noted. Going forward, administration will submit a statement noting the previously mentioned concerns for all renewable energy projects submitted to the AUC in Kneehill County. We will not participate beyond the original written submission unless council determines on a site-specific basis that a proposed project warrants further participation. At that point, council will direct administration that they want to participate in the hearing, and they will designate budgeted funds specifically for any required experts. Council is committed to continuing with advocacy through RMA and with the province in order to ensure that the protection of high classification agricultural lands can be achieved when citing these large projects. It should be noted on the project that we did submit concerns for, Kneehill County did not receive standing to participate in the hearing in that Three Hills Solar project, and the hearing is scheduled to be held September 19th to the 22nd.
Okay, thank you for that. Are there any comments or questions? Certainly, we've left the door open in the future. If we do want to participate, we recognize that the expertise that we need at that point is probably outside of our own house, and so we would be hiring those to participate at a hearing if we did that. But in the meantime, we're just going to submit our concerns.
Correct.
Okay. Everyone understands where we're at. Any questions or comments? Councillor Cunningham.
So I would like to see the motion altered a bit, but we can have discussion around that before. Just a couple of questions for you, Ms. Hazelton. In the correspondence from the AUC, did they provide any information why the county wouldn't have been granted standing? Is it because we don't own land?
It's likely because we don't own land, and there were quite a few that, there were several that got standing and quite a few that did not.
Okay, go ahead, Councillor Cunningham.
So we've talked about this obviously ad nauseum, and I think now that we know what happened with the election last night, we are better prepared to go forward with our advocacy. I do just find it interesting after listening to the AUC representatives at RMA, it just likens me to saying to Councillor Penner, I'd like you to come over for supper. You can come to the door, you can peek in the window, but you're not allowed to have a seat at the table. And I think, you know, that's where we're at, is we want to have a seat at that table. And there's some conflicting information from what we're receiving from them when we sit at these RMA conventions and breakout sessions. So it will be interesting going forward to see what this current government is
For
going to
sure,
do.
and I can certainly provide that letter of standing. I do have a copy of that and what they've done there, so we can send that out to you.
Councillor Forbes.
I know that our June 12th renewable energy meeting for our ratepayers, would it be possible to, I don't know if this is, would it be possible to ask the question if they would like us to go to bat for them on their behalf with their dollars as a county while we're in that?
Okay, so not only use it as a public engagement to inform, but to request information back towards us. I think anything is possible. Mr. Hogan, would you like to comment?
You know, the short, through you, Mr. Chair, the short version is, can it be done? It can. I think what we'd want to do is we'd want to take that back and maybe talk about some of the pros and cons of doing it at that venue. That venue might be a limited one for that type of engagement, but can it be done? Short answer is yes. The question can be posed.
So maybe the question that's being asked is, can we look to engage with our ratepayers as far as their commitment to this type of engagement, and whether they would support the county expending what are potentially significant dollars to advocate in these situations? Okay, so that's feedback for administration. Mr. Gannon, go ahead.
Yes, through the chair, my recommendation would be to council that if that's a strategy they would like to go forward with, that we work with communications on a way to pull the entire county to ensure a larger participation. I feel there may be individuals that share an opinion that may not be available for that meeting, and I think council would be more in line with understanding what the views of the county would be with a larger format.
Agreed, and I think that was probably in the cautionary note from Mr. Hogan regarding that. But I think that the council as a whole, my understanding of our feeling is that if we are to expend dollars like that, we certainly want to know that the ratepayers are behind us doing that. And if they want us to advocate more aggressively on their behalf, we need an understanding that they're supportive of that. And that has to be a fairly broad representation of the ratepayers. So I also think it's important to note that at RMA and other opportunities at the provincial level, this council will continue to push for a seat at the table that Councillor Cunningham referred to. We don't want to be left standing at the door. We actually want to participate, and we want to have recognition of the value of our participation in that process. So I think that's also important for our ratepayers to understand. We're not just throwing up our hands and saying, well, we can't do anything. We are continuing to advocate, and I've seen Councillor Phobes and Councillor Cunningham also at the microphone talking to provincial representatives to say we want to be there. I think we made that point fairly strong with the Minister of Municipal Affairs when we were at the last convention. So we will continue to push on this file as well. So, Councillor Cunningham.
Yes, and thank you, Deputy King. You did very eloquently at RMA in the spring, so thank you for that. So I think the topic of the legal costs is redundant until they let us actually have that seat at the table. So, but curious, if you know, do they ever tell you what the percentages that people, individuals or municipalities are able to recoup that cost?
I do have the cost recovery on the one that we know they hired a bunch of experts, and they got 55%. And they're fighting that because the reasoning was not, in their minds, justified for not getting the 100%. So I do know what their costs were, and I do know that they've been awarded 55%.
From my own personal experience with these quasi-judicial boards, oftentimes the awarding of cost is very ambiguous at the very least, and often the energy companies are compensated quite well, but the appellants aren't necessarily compensated in the same way. So there is a difference in how things are approached. However, we digress from what we want to do, and Councillor Cunningham, you were wondering about possibly amending the motion?
Right, so this motion to me, I just find that it's very case specific to the one that's currently on the table. and just wondering if we could put it more, that council would direct administration to, what would we say, to, it would be on a case-by-case basis, like, because right here, it basically says we're going to just do the statement of intent, but really until other projects come before us, we really can't really determine what we do on that case.
Okay, so perhaps you're trying to broaden the scope of this. Okay, so currently, the way this reads to me says that Kneehill County will submit automatically for any of these type of projects that come in, we will submit a statement outlining our concerns in the 1, 2, 3, 4 items that are noted. So agricultural land, high quality of the land being removed, who's responsible for reclamation, weeds, pest, and disease management, and the timing of construction and erosion of lands. Those are automatic. And then, so do we want to expand it to beyond that?
Yeah, and I think just because 1 to 4 is very, again, case specific to this one. This one is a solar facility, that we could have a wind come forward, which would pose different criteria to that.
Okay.
So I just don't want to limit us, so I don't know whether we add, like you say, keep where it's at, and determine on a case-by-case basis if we submit intervenor status, or however you want to word that.
So maybe what we need to do is just make sure that the understanding on the administration side is that although those 4 are specific concerns that we likely are going to have in all cases, there may be additional concerns that we might want to put forward for a specific project of a specific type. So if, like you said, if a wind project came forward and there's a different concern that we have, that it could be added in addition to these existing ones. And I don't know if we need to put that into the motion specifically, as long as that's a understanding of administration. Or, go ahead.
The one thing I've learned in the last year and a half is if it's not in the motion, it's not there. So I would just like us to have a very robust
Okay.
motion, please.
All right. Okay, so then we are going to amend that motion. And I would suggest if we're doing that, that we need a suggestion on how you'd like to see that wording.
Well, I would say maybe something along the lines of council will determine on a case-by-case basis the level of participation at the AUC level hearing, however you want to word that.
Okay. So council direct administration to submit a statement for renewable energy projects on a specific case-by-case basis for all energy projects applied for within Kneehill County, something like that.
While they're wordsmithing, can I add a?
Yes, go ahead,
Sure.
Councillor Penner.
So once again, I refer back to FCM, and we need to continue to be advocates here with it, and especially with the classification of land. There's a lot of areas that we will not be able to, like this one, we didn't get a standing because we don't own land. But as a county, it's very important that we really look hard at the classification of the lands and really fight for that it is not on good agricultural land. That's our number one grounds that we can stand on. So I think we need to continue to work as a county and as a province, as municipalities within the province to advocate to our provincial government. So there was many discussions with our breakout sessions amongst ourselves at tables and all that. It's a big concern right across the country, and it depends on your government.
Well, and when you read in the media how the federal government is now talking about placing limitations on energy generation through natural gas and other means and looking more and more toward green energy, they're not thinking about the ramifications as far as land and food production and those kind of things. There's a almost religious fervor related to green energy. And so the long-term downstream impacts are not being considered. And that's our job, to be pushing that agenda. And so, Councillor Penner, I appreciate the comment that we need to continue. And I think we've started that process in Kneehill County through our MDP review. Unfortunately for us, it's a long process, as well as the advocacy for that concern. But
Correct, and just to give a little background, just within Toronto, asked questions when I was there, we're right downtown, asked them, they're all for green energy. So, and you know what they see when they go to the airport? They see a little windmill. It's like a third maybe of the size of the ones that we're going to get, you know, within the area, within the province, you know what I mean? They're massive now. And the majority of the people that live in the big cities, that live downtown, there's nothing wrong with that, don't get me wrong. They really don't understand, they just love that green word.
yeah, renewable. Councillor Christie, and then I'll come to you, Mr. Gannon.
To follow up on Deb's comment, urban or rural table conversations where we would be stupid to put it on good farmland. I toured a community center that 90% of their energy is from their roof. And it's got a high school, and they employ 66 people, so it's not a small facility. But they feel there's huge potential both on energy efficiency of those buildings, because the building's 3 years old and terribly efficient, but 90% of their energy is from what they produce. But the opinion right across the country is that you got to be stupid to put it on poor farmland or good farmland, and it's happening every day. So that communication is terribly important.
Mr. Gannon.
Thank you, through the chair. I just want further clarification of council's desire to poll the residents at this time, if that's a wish they'd like to incorporate in the recommended motion.
First, I'm going to ask if the motion as it sits is to Councillor Cunningham's liking.
I'm being a real stickler here, but, so I just think, because we know there's two different avenues, statement of intent to participate or intervener status. So when I read this, it says that we're gonna be more of a statement of intent to participate. And I think we wanna leave the door open. We don't know what the provincial government's gonna do. Minister Horner said he's gonna have a deep dive with 5 ministries to this. So there might be changes coming where we do have a seat at that table. So I just wanna leave it open that on a case-by-case basis, we may do a statement of intent to participate, or we may look for intervener status, depending on the specific project.
Okay. So again, my question would be is how do you want to amend the motion that's in front of us to be specifically, to capture what you want specifically?
So what I previously mentioned was council will determine on a case-by-case basis the level of participation at the AUC level. So either whether that's statement of intent or it's intervener status. Leaves that open.
The level of participation in each particular project, right? And again, I guess the intent is to be clear that we want the ability to direct that, right?
We can maybe, if I might, make this simpler and just say that council direct administration to bring back every application for council to
Determine our level
determine
of,
the level of participation.
yeah. With that, and with regard to your comment, Mr. Gannon, I think that if we're going to direct administration to do that, I'd like to see that captured in a separate motion to this one. That if we're going to go forward with a poll of some kind with our ratepayers to determine how much participation they would support, that we do that in a separate motion, if that's okay. Would that be okay? I guess it's up to council to decide that, so. Just what we're trying to do here in terms of directing for the level of participation at potential hearings at AUC, and then trying to find out what our ratepayers would like us to do. I think they're kind of, they're complementary, but they're also separate. Councillor Cunningham, or Christie. Councillor Christie. I see that hand, but I looked right by you.
Your comment is to follow what the ratepayers want to do. A ratepayer signed that contract at the end of the day. So you have to have both sides of this sword. And for sure, it's a delicate place to be, and that's where we need provincial guidance and authority, I think, at the end of the day.
Yeah, and I agree with you. I think it's important to note that in all cases, we are talking about ratepayers, and excuse me, we are impacting their land use decisions. However, excuse me again, if the ratepayers in general within Kneehill County are not supportive of these type of developments on our best agriculture land, and we as a council are also of that opinion, it is helpful for us to know that it is a much broader support level and to be assured of that if we're going to actively get involved in these developments. So I think it's important that we make sure that administration knows that we want to have a conversation, and I think does this motion give you what you're looking for, Councillor Cunningham? And it's also important for us to know what our ratepayers want us to do. Motion's good. Okay, so the motion now reads that Councillor Cunningham moved that council determine on a case-by-case basis the level of participation with the AUC for any applications for renewable energy developments within Kneehill County. So I'll ask the question of administration, is that clear enough in terms of direction?
Through Mr. Chair, as Ms. Hazelton has said, that is a change from the discussion at the Committee of the Whole, where we would be doing something automatically for each of these. Yep. This now does involve us coming back for every single one to council to determine what you want to do.
Yep. Councillor Cunningham, any further comment or questions?
Open that big can of worms. Yeah, no, for sure. I love this. Like we say, we're not pro, we're not con. We just want a seat at the table. And the land use decisions, like we said, I think it was our neighboring Reeve at the one breakout session, like she said, this is what we are mandated to do. We are told municipalities are to make the land use decisions. So I think we're just, again, wanting that ability to do that. So yes, I love this. Yeah, perfect.
So even though this is a change in the way we're steering, it does still allows us to go forward with each of these developments and give specific input, case by case. Any further comments, questions, discussion? We're ready to vote. I'm going to ask the question then. All those in favor of the motion that council determine on a case-by-case basis the level of participation with the AUC for any application for renewable energy developments within Kneehill County? You're in favor of that motion? All in favor? And that's carried unanimously. So the other item that came up was just to find out from our ratepayers in one way or another to determine their level of support for council in our efforts to protect agriculture land and to have some say in these developments, and at what level of expenditure they would be willing for us to participate. So would it be reasonable at this point to table that and allow administration to come back with additional information on how that might take place. So we're not gonna lose it. It'll be an item that would come back to the next council agenda, although that's fairly short timeline, but within a reasonable period of time to a council meeting where we would have a conversation on how we would address that. Councillor Penner.
I was actually gonna bring that up. I'd like to see it come back to council after our evening intro shoot, just to get a feel, and then we might be able to, there might be some questions asked from the attendees, you know, to the presenters that night, and we might be able to come up with how we can ask that question.
Okay.
In the wording and stuff like that.
So perhaps it could come back for discussion on the 20th of June, the Committee of the Whole, and then presentation to council on the 27th, which is our council meetings and Committee of the Whole meeting after the June 12th. We have a council meeting immediately following that, but it's too close. So would that be agreeable that we table this then till after the ratepayer meeting on green energy with the intent of seeing some kind of discussion at the Committee of the Whole on the 20th and then back to council on the 27th. Mr. Hogan.
If I can, Mr. Chair, what I'd suggest is there's no motion in front of you to table right now. If I can suggest even just a motion directing administration to place a discussion item on the June 20th Committee of the Whole regarding the county's involvement in renewable energy developments.
Okay.
And then that would be enough to direct us to place that on that agenda. And then it wouldn't be, that's a recorded motion, it wouldn't be lost. And then we would bring that back for you on that Committee of the Whole.
Okay. Councillor Cunningham.
I love that, and I think it's going to be very difficult because, as we know, I know we keep referring to the certain project that just went through a hearing. It was such a different, it was a very large-scale project, so it's going to be really hard to tell the ratepayers what the costs would be because we don't know, and I would love to know how many municipalities have been granted standing. So I think it's going to be it's going to be very hard to determine what that number would be.
Yeah, I don't know if they can provide that or not.
Yeah, and perhaps, like you said, after the June 12th meeting, maybe they can provide a little more information.
Well, the reality is that depending on the situation and the environment that we find ourselves and the complexity or otherwise of the project and how deep we get into this, I mean, we start getting into legal action and that type of thing, the costs can escalate. If we're talking about just appearing with standing at a hearing and hiring several experts, you know, we might be $50,000, $60,000, who knows? But if we all of a sudden get involved in a court case where we're in opposition to a development, then we could be talking some serious coin, and it could escalate on us, correct? And so that's where we need to have some idea of what's happened in the past with other municipalities, how that standing is actually granted and how we would be effective in getting standing so we could appear at a hearing. So there's a lot of stuff that's going to have to be developed. Okay, Mr. Gannon, I did see your hand.
Yes, thank you through the chair. We can bring back different options where it could give a wide variety of different polling to ensure the level of commitment of what they're willing to go up to. And we can create those different options for council to see to ensure the communication and that plan is going to be effective enough for the repairs as far as council's determination is. Thank you.
Okay, all right. Councillor Christie.
In my business, I don't mind spending money on research and development and like this to say I'm here, but I want to know what I get at the other end for success. If I'm not going to get any success, I don't put much energy in it.
Well, and that's where we also need to continue that work that we're doing at the provincial level to make sure that our bylaws and land use planning and the documents that we have in place are recognized and acknowledged in this process. And so that's also critical. So anyway, we have a motion to place a discussion item to the June 20th Committee of the Whole agenda regarding the county's involvement with renewable energy developments. Somebody want to make that motion? Councillor Forbes?
So moved.
Thank you. So Councillor Forbes has made the motion. So basically, we understand this is going to allow further discussion about our participation in these hearings and at what level of involvement we have. Any other questions or comments? If not, I'm going to ask the question. All those in favor? And that is carried unanimously. And I am going to say we're taking a break. It's 9:50 a.m. and so we'll recess until 10 a.m. Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Hazelton. All right. Okay, it's 10:03 and I'm going to call our meeting back to order. And we are going to move in our agenda to 5.3.1, RCMP quarterly reporting and Kneehill enforcement stats. And Mr. Gannon, looks like you're pinch hitting.
Thank you, Council.
Whenever you're ready.
First, I'd like to say that Ms. Grossfield sends her regrets. She had a previous appointment and could not get out of it, so she really wanted to come and present the quarterly report. She's very proud of the efforts done by the entire team, and I'll go through the report and show why. Kneehill County, as Council is aware, has 5 RCMP detachments serving our area: Three Hills, Innisfail, Drumheller, Bisker, and Olds. 4 detachments provide quarterly reports that they have based on Council's priorities for our community. Innisfail provides reporting, however, it is not applicable to the Kneehill County as they are a very small area. So I'm going to go further on into the report of showing that as part of the Kneehill County enforcement statistics for January 1st to May 15th, we had 65 citations underneath the Traffic Act, 46 warnings and 19 tickets, 19 animal control files within Kneehill County, and 41 animal control or animal and general bylaw files. They're taking up a significant amount of time and effort. They're repeat offenders in this area, and it's taken a considerable amount of resources for the team. 7 bylaw violation tickets were issued, 1 suspicious vehicle, 5 assists with fire and RCMP, 5 school visits, which is very good, with 3 presentations, volunteer week, coffee. Hamlet patrols, 91 patrols for 11 hours, rural patrols for 347 patrols at 239 hours, targeted patrols of 27 patrols with 17 hours. Road ban efforts, 30 unloaded trucks, 8 legally loaded trucks, 6 overweight but exempt trucks pulled over, 3 overweight warnings, 2 overweight violation tickets issued, 9 approved road ban exemption permits issued for 218 vehicle exemptions, which includes 421 allowed overweight hauls. So at this time, we wanted to make sure that we provided some statistical information and show the level of effort within the team. And I'm here for any questions that council may have. Thank you.
Councillor Forbes. I see that now.
Thank you. So I had a ratepayer ask me a couple of questions. How much contracted time is spent in our neighboring communities per month? Because you've listed what you do for Hamlets, the rurals, but I think it's more the Acme, Carbon, Linden, Trochu, Three Hills.
Through the chair, we can break that down even further. We look at the rural patrols as that similar patrol aspect, from my understanding. So we can break that down further to the individual communities if it's council's desire, just to show the amount of activity in there. I also want council to understand is that the majority of this work that you see here was done with 1 and a bit peace officers. We had one that just got their ability to patrol and unfortunately had to take a small leave of absence. So this is coming from one of our peace officers. So at this time, if it's council's wish, we can give a further breakdown. I'll work with the manager on those statistics.
Go ahead, Councillor Forbes.
And the second part to their question is, and of those patrols, how much officer time is spent in court? Do you know that?
That's a great question. I don't have that offhand. And once again, I can ask Ms. Grossfield on that information for you.
Okay, any other questions or comments? Yeah. We all know who we're talking about.
I could do the Vanna White.
Yeah. We need to acknowledge Officer Rempel's commitment and assistance, for sure. Brandon, you've done a great job, so. My question, I guess, did you have a question? Nope, okay. I noticed that we're doing a lot of those animal and bylaw stuff and we have contracts with them, and my assumption is that we are covering our costs in those contracts. But I assume that if we're not, that will be addressed in ongoing negotiations.
Through the chair, you're absolutely correct. We do have agreements and we're abiding by those agreements, but at the same time, we are reviewing the programs.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Penner?
Okay, that was my exact question, to do with the 41 animals within adjoining municipalities here within. I know there's probably all different contracts and I'm looking forward, hopefully we can standardize them right across the board. It's a give and take on both sides, I guess, but yeah, that was a question that I had, was concerning the cost recovery for those 41 animal bylaw events, or general, they're a bit of both, I guess.
Both, thank you.
Councillor Cunningham, yes.
So you guys stole my questions too, but just kind of a traditional question. Can you guys remind me what happened with the animal bylaw or control before we had the peace officers? Like, I think, like, was it a provincial or?
The animal program, from what I understand, I can get more clarity on this because this, I only know a portion of it from conversations with the manager. I understood that there used to be an area that would take the animals for us, and it was much easier in order to manage the animal program as such. Since then, that has closed down, which has made the animal portion very difficult to manage, and the resource base increased because of those inabilities and delays within the support mechanisms of getting the animals taken or brought in.
I just have this picture in my mind of a dog in handcuffs in the back seat of a patrol vehicle.
Doggy cuffs.
Go ahead,
Sorry.
Councillor Penner.
Just furthermore to that, years ago with the municipalities in the south part of the county, they were using, if I can correctly, a business or a bylaw officer out of Bicycura, Irricana were dealing with a lot of those in the south, but I know you talked about it has changed.
Correct, and from my understanding is Acme does also use Bicycur for some of their peace officer requirements that deal with the animal control as well. So we're all facing, some difficulties with that, and we're trying to find a way through that. Unfortunately, the resources are very difficult to acquire.
Any other questions? So I have one other question, and it relates to our road band exemption program that we offer. And I am quite interested to see the number of overweight hauls that were allowed in that time frame. And so do we have an idea? Okay, so it's 9 premises that would have applied. Is that what the 9 approved road band exemptions applies to?
So the 9 approved road exemption permits were 9 separate companies, from what I understand, that were issued for 218 vehicle exemptions underneath those 9, which included 421 loads or hauls. So under those 9 permits, that's the amount of activity within those 9 permits.
Okay, so that could be a seed grower on a band road who gets an exemption and so has vehicles coming in and out, 50 vehicles come in and out, and they all are exempt.
Correct.
Could be a feedlot that's on a band surface having the same either grain or livestock coming in and out?
Correct. I don't have the particulars of the individual applications or the permits, but if that's information that council desires, we can definitely find some and ensure we provide that information forward.
It's more of, I guess, curiosity on my part. So I'm assuming that we have 9 locations that applied for exemption, and the loads that went in and out of those would have been exempt under that. And so that's what we see in terms of the 218 vehicles and the 421 loads.
You are correct.
Okay. Okay, Mr. Zier.
Yeah, thank you. Through the chair, just to follow up on a little more detail on that. You're correct that 9 road exempt permits were issued. We did receive more than 9 applications. Every application we got through, we assessed the road conditions. We saw if a lot of the intent behind this is for landlocked parcels to allow access, right? So if we have, if we can provide different routing for these applicants, we have in the past, and we've denied quite a few road exemption permits, giving them alternate methods to get to their destination, even if it is a little bit longer of a haul. When we brought this to council, the intent was for landlocked parcels and to expedite some of the hauling on the banned roads, and I think it's met its purpose for sure on that. There were a few oil field companies that tried to apply for that as well. The intent behind this, while it's not specifically noted in there, is for ag exemptions. Same thing, like I say, if there's a landlocked parcel and they could have proven to the county that this is the only method of accessing the parcel, we would consider it, but we had to refuse those as well. So just a little bit more context on that.
Councillor Christie.
So this doesn't include any Alberta transportation permits if I'm going on a commercial, if I'm a commercial truck. If those permits are issued by the province, do we get any revenue from those permits or anything like that?
Through the chair, not that I'm aware of, but I will verify that. From what I understand, it is provincial and it's solely managed by the province, but I can get more clarification on that for you.
No, back in the day when I used permits for hauling feed because of the size of the loads on numbered highways, but it wasn't a big fee for me, but I know oil field pays huge fees for big loads. And I'm just curious, and the intent of that is to help service the roads. But if they give a permit for a numbered highway, doesn't give them right to come onto our gravel roads or not, or do you know?
No.
No, and through the chair, we do subscribe to the county through the Travis system, through the, it's the provincial road permitting system that allows them not only, it doesn't allow them, we don't have jurisdiction over the provincial highways, but it does allow us access onto our roads as well. They apply through a contract company that we utilize, and then the company charges them a fee. We do get revenue from that. It's pretty minimal, but at the same time, it does cover the costs of the inspection, that sort of thing.
Thank you.
Councillor Cunningham.
So last year we spoke of, we had 2 electronic speed signs and one of them was damaged. I think it was, I don't know if it was water or what it was. So just wondering if that one's been fixed and if we have the ability to have the 2 functioning now.
I'm not sure of that answer right now, but I can get you the information to find out if it has, if the pieces were available and if it's been repaired.
It's interesting to note that through the provincial permitting system, they're still collecting revenue for large loads using their infrastructure. However, because of the loss of the well drilling tax and some of the other things that we were allowed to protect our infrastructure with, those have gone away. Interesting. It's frustrating, but interesting. Any other questions or comments related to the information that's in front of us? I don't see any. Councillor Cunningham.
I'll move that council approves the RCMP quarterly reports and county enforcement report as presented.
Okay, and just before we finalize that conversation, as far as our county peace officers, where are we at right now? Is the second one back on duty?
Through the chair, yes, correct. The second one is back on duty, and we just finished the hiring for the third applicant, third officer. So we should have a third one in shortly.
So our long-serving and long-standing officer will get some help.
We're hoping so.
He's hoping so. Yeah. Well, I think it's important as council that we acknowledge the work that our peace officers do for us and to extend our thanks. And because you're sitting there, thank you. It's very much appreciated. We know that it's a lot of work when you're by yourself. And so we look forward to having that complimentary help. And we also appreciate the work done by our protective services side of things. And so you could certainly pass along our thanks in that area as well.
I will, thank you.
Okay. Mr. Hogan.
I was just going to build on what Mr. Gannon said, is our third officer will begin June 12th.
Okay, thank you. All right, so we do have a motion to approve the RCMP quarterly reports and the county enforcement report as presented. Is there any further questions or discussion? Councillor Penner.
I refer back to FCM again. We are very unique in Kneehill County when it comes to our peace officers, and that our number one priority is to educate our residents. And whereas most of them use it as an income, and I think we can be very proud of that. And I think there might be a long-term ripple effect, but it is happening by educating our residents that this is, how it is, and not using it as a revenue stream. So I just wanted to let you know that. That was another conversation I had, one of the many, so.
Good. All right. Okay, so are we ready for the question? All those in favor of the motion to approve? And that is carried unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Gannon. And to pass along our thanks. All right, now, I filed my agenda here. Okay, so moving on in our agenda, we are at 6.1, bylaw number 1841, addressing bylaw. And Ms. Severson, you are still here. Welcome.
Haven't got rid of me quite yet.
Well, it's not so much for trying to get rid of you. You know that.
Yes, thank you. So just trying to clean up a few things before I am done. And one of them was the addressing bylaw. Currently, we do have an addressing system in place, and we have a current bylaw that was put into place in 2006 when the province provided grant funding for rural municipalities to create rural addresses, because until that time, we didn't have a process in place. And we've been relying on that bylaw ever since, and it was just time for an update. So what we did was we combined the Hamlet addressing bylaw and the rural addressing bylaw into one document. And it's just a guideline to staff as to how to create the addresses, how to enforce, or that they are a condition of development, make sure people do have the signage, and also to provide guidance on maintenance and replacement. Previous bylaw did not have that in place. So we do have a rate in our master rates bylaw of $100 for replacement and maintenance at this point in time, and it's $250 for a new installation. It is a condition of development. As well, anybody that has farm buildings, if they have a spot with just farm buildings, they can apply for a rural address. Oil and gas industry, it's up to them if they would like one or not. All rural addresses are forwarded to 911 TELUS system. So that is the only place that we forward it to. And then they have a database for the emergency services. The only issue that still remains throughout the province is delivery companies. They have trouble finding addresses, but they're not on Google. So unless they apply to, I think it's the AMDSP, the Alberta Municipal Data Sharing Partnership, and get the data from there, which is where we also provide it. They wouldn't have that information. So there are, odd places within the county that we're continually working on trying to make a more common sense address for. And those are projects that will be undertaken over time. And because of course they do cost money and they have to be budgeted for. So at this time, we're just introducing the new bylaw so that we have a guideline that is familiar to everybody. And it has been a team effort between planning, emergency services, GIS, and the tax department, because we all use those addresses for different things. And it took a while to get there, but we are all on the same page, and I think that this is going to move forward quite nicely.
All right, thank you. Are there any questions related to the addressing bylaw? We understand the intent is to have people at a specific address that we can locate either for emergency purposes or otherwise, and be clear about where those are. Councillor Penner.
So this is something that we bought in through the grant someone at us years ago, the blue signs I'm talking about now.
Yeah.
Should a blue sign fade and it's unreadable, is that up to the landowner to replace that and not ourselves?
Yeah,
Okay.
it's a maintenance thing. So if they want it replaced, or if we tell them they need to, there's not very many that we have to worry about, but if they want it replaced, they would phone us. We would order the sign for them and then let them know it's here so they can come and get it and replace it.
Okay.
We don't do the actual installation for the replacements.
Can they replace it with their own sign? Or
No.
does it have to come through the county?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Specific guidelines, yeah. We do look, I believe we use a local company to create them out of Linden, so.
You're not even supposed to put anything else on that signpost, just
No.
your rural address sign.
Yeah.
Any other questions or comments? If not, we have some motions to make, I guess, to clarify this. Councillor Cunningham.
Well, I just want to say that my husband's really happy when the delivery company can't find my house. But anyhow, further to that, I will move that council give first reading to bylaw 1841, that being the addressing bylaw.
Okay, so we have a motion for first reading to bylaw 1841, the addressing bylaw. Any further comment or discussion? Okay, seeing none. All those in favor? That is carried unanimously. Thank you. Councillor Christie.
I'd move second reading to bylaw 1841.
Right, we have a motion to give second reading to bylaw 1841. All those in favor? And that is also carried unanimously. Thank you. Councillor Forbes.
The council gives consideration to hold third reading to bylaw 1841.
Okay, so we have a motion to give consideration to hold third reading to bylaw 1841. All those in favor? And that is carried unanimously, and the record should show that that happened. And we have one further motion. Councillor Penner, whose turn, right?
Yeah. I'd make the motion that council provide third and final reading to bylaw 1841.
Okay, so we have a motion to give third and final reading to bylaw 1841. Any last chance for discussion? All those in favor? And that is carried unanimously. Thank you, Ms. Severson. All right, moving on. We are at we're at 6.2, 2024 budget guidelines. And who's presenting? Mr. Hogan? If you would, please, then.
Thank you, Deputy Reeve King. What's in front of you is basically the first start, or the first foot forward in developing the 2024 budget. We haven't done budgeting in at least a couple of weeks, so we thought we'd bring this back to you. For the in the development of the county budget is a very long-term thing. When we look at this, the actual development of next year's budget for administration is essentially beginning now. Usually it begins even just a little bit before this, but we start working through that process. What we have just done is, council's aware, in the background we're developing a number of administrative directives, which is clarifying and codifying how we do our internal operations. One of the ones that we just completed was the budget development timelines. And so now internally we have our own benchmarks as to when each phase of the budget we want that completed, which of course allows us to bring it to you and puts it on a schedule that ideally, if we have all the resources that we normally have, we would have a completed budget to you sometime in December of this year. So we're actually, the timelines we established, if we just established them, we're already a touch behind in where we would be in a normal year. So we are managing that. But what we wanted to confirm with council is this practice that we've done for, I think, about 3 years now, 3 or 4 years, where we've come to you and said, what are your philosophies regarding the budget? What are the overarching things that you want to look at in the budget? Or as we're going through, what lens do you want us to view some of these things through? And what we're proposing, advancement of council's strategic plan, maintain existing service levels, improve customer service, keep tax rates competitive, incorporate a proactive infrastructure renewal plan, identify and incorporate efficiencies, ensure rates and fees for service are appropriate. So as a suggestion, these are the ones that we prepared the 2023 budget with, looking to see, are we preparing the 2024 budget on the same set of criteria or overarching philosophies. Council may wish to adopt these. You may wish to amend them slightly or to amend them a lot. That's your domain. At the end of the day, this is guidance to us as to how we view that document. So when we go through these, if we take the first one as an example, advancement of council's strategic plan, if you endorse that one, what you're telling us is that you expect to see steps or things in the budget that advance the strategic plan that you've adopted. Right? So we would have to build those in somewhere. If you go to the last one as an example, ensure rates and fees for service are appropriate, that might be one that you amend a little bit and say, well, what does appropriate mean? As a council, you've had discussions in the last little while about moving to more cost recovery where that makes sense, right? That might be something that you codify with a bit more intent in that one, as an example. So really what's in front of you today is asking you to look at these and confirm that, yeah, this is the lens through which you want administration to build the budget. And of course, when I say build the budget, what I mean is build the beginning of the budget, because it ultimately has to come back to you guys for comment, for review, and all those sorts of things. So this just guides us when we put that first draft in front of you, that it's built on these principles, right? As we go through. If there's other ones that council feels should be included in there, we can have a discussion about what those might mean. And this is our process going forward in each year, would be to essentially start the budget development process with this type of question to council.
Okay, questions, clarification, comments? My only one comment would be is I understood that we are going to engage in some further discussions around things like water and others as far as fees and services, and that we're going to have a more comprehensive discussion in that area. So are we to anticipate seeing that in the future?
I believe they've got, there's a schedule for some of those departments to meet to begin looking at that process. Mm-hmm. Once we're through, we are through the 2023 budget, once we're through audit and that type of activity, then I think the plan is for utilities and corporate services to begin that process.
Okay. Something for us to look forward to. Any other questions or clarification required? Are we good with what we see here in front of us? that's the case, then what's the wish of council? Sure, Councillor Forbes.
That the 2024 operating and capital budgets, the 2025 to 2027 operating forecast, and the 2025 to 2029 capital forecast be prepared in accordance with the following guiding principles as directed in this report as listed.
Okay. So we are going to go forward based on the principles that are outlined in the motion, as we have done in the past. And so, any further clarification? Okay, so we're focusing on council's strategic plan, existing service levels, improving customer service, keeping our tax rates competitive, incorporating a proactive infrastructure renewal plan, identify and incorporate efficiencies, and ensure rates and fees for services are appropriate. Okay, I'm going to ask the question then. All those in favor? And that is carried unanimously. Thank you, and thank you, Mr. Hogan.
Thank you.
We are on to 6.3, a tax deferral agreement. And the champion of our tax deferral agreements, Ms. Severson, welcome back.
I thought we were done with these two, but apparently not. So High Point Oil was in a tax deferral agreement for their 2020 taxes in arrears, and their 21 and 22 taxes were paid on time on their well sites. They continue to pay monthly, and they've just realized that they've been charged penalties on the outstanding arrears that still remain because it wasn't part of their original agreement. So they have come back and asked if they continue to pay. I think they're paying about $5,000 a month right now to enter into an agreement to not have taxes or penalties assessed during the term until they are paid in full. I anticipate it will be paid prior to the 12 months, but I wanted to provide a nice clean agreement for them. And it would not be any cancellation or any voids of previous, just going forward, starting January 1st. We won't charge penalties if they do not default with monthly payments. That's the proposal that they have requested and that administration is recommending in regard to this. They were pretty good at paying monthly regularly, so.
So are we referring to the current tax year or previous taxes?
This particular agreement would include 2023 as well, because we haven't actually assessed that or posted those until June 15th. But this also includes arrears for that particular linear account.
Okay, so, and those specifically relate to 2021 and 22?
Yes.
Okay, so what we're talking about is the linear.
The linear.
20 and 21 and 22, and then would be linear and
Just the linear 23.
23.
Yeah. They had a hard time understanding the differences. High Point had purchased these assets and did not realize there was 3 specific roll numbers. And so they were paying us for their well sites, but not realizing that they had the linear. And he was really bad at corresponding back to me. So I attempted to contact him many times to explain it. And I did explain it quite a few times and then just didn't get a response. So it's been a work in progress with this gentleman. And I think we're finally maybe where we need to be, and this will be cleared off.
Okay. All right. So in your request for a decision, you also outlined a number of other companies that have existing arrears. Are those companies in agreements with us, or they're just out there?
They're just out there. So I just wanted to summarize again for you where we were sitting at this point in time. I think the last time we had a summary was back in January. So Alpha Bow Energy, they have an order against them from AER because they're not meeting obligations anywhere. I have no idea what's happening with that. I have researched, and they were supposed to have information to the AER by April 30th, and nothing's been posted if they've met those requirements. But the $44,000 that they currently owe us is like minuscule compared to what they owe to many, many municipalities. So they're quite in debt in many, many ways. And we have a writ against them, but there's millions of dollars of writs against them. So I don't anticipate much change with that one. It's going to continue. And it is only 2 well sites that we are assessing on those, but they are producing, so maybe eventually we'll get that paid. With the new AER guidelines, though, with the that the provincial government provided to them, that they have to have that $20,000 threshold, I think all of these companies are going to meet that threshold. They're not going to get assets transferred or be able to purchase through the AER because across the province, we're not the only ones. That $20,000 is pretty minimal. Yep. So I think that I just kind of wanted to outline where we sit, and that most of these will be covered through that new directive, and hopefully they won't get more assets within the county without having to pay their taxes. Tallahassee is one that is attempting. They actually, I just got an email from our legal department that they were denied a transfer of assets because of their outstanding amounts owing. So something's being done.
Well, it's good that the province has finally heard as relates to this issue and is starting to impede a company's opportunity to buy and transfer assets.
Yes,
without
exactly.
paying their municipal taxes. So it's helpful to us. So.
It's finally a tool that can be used.
Yep.
That might get some action.
They actually might pay attention to.
Exactly. Exactly. So just overall, we're in a really good spot compared to a lot of municipalities now. We've been through a lot over the last several years, but I just wanted to summarize where we were right now. And going forward, I've kind of updated each of these files for Regina so that she can kind of keep on top of them and keep an eye on them, and hopefully she'll be able to come here with good news one day.
So what you're saying is you're leaving Ms. Nyman in a good spot.
I hope so.
Okay, well, thank you. Are there any questions related to this tax deferral payment agreement with High Point Oil? Okay, then what's the wish of council? Councillor Forbes.
I'll read it. That Kneehill County Council enter into a tax deferral payment agreement with High Point Oil, Inc. for a term of 1 year beginning June 1st of 2023 for payment of tax arrears and 2023 levies for the roll 4000190000, and that penalties will not be assessed during the term of the agreement unless in default.
Okay, so we're going to enter into a tax deferral payment agreement. And as a consequence, as long as they're paying what they agreed to, we will not be charging them penalties. Any further discussion? If not, all those in favor? And that is carried unanimously. So thank you very much again, Ms. Severson. And we certainly don't want to see you go, so we hope to see you again for some reason. Thank you. All right, everybody's okay to continue? Okay, we are going then to move to new business 7.1, Airport Marketing Agreement. And Mr. Hogan, whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Deputy Reeve King. This item, Council will recognize from our previous committee of the whole meeting where there was discussion about this and about the program itself and what we're hoping to achieve. To reiterate parts of that discussion, what has been working in the background is discussions between the county, the town, and Prairie College around the future of the Three Hills Airport in terms of the best ways to manage it, the best ways to develop additional revenues for the airport that could be then used to make upgrades to the airport, maybe provide additional services provide cost recovery, those sorts of activities. In driving those, one of the big things is looking at the amount of use of the airport and determining, I shouldn't say determining, but essentially the more individuals that are using the airport, as in landing, taking off, the more that you're going to have people in the area, the more fuel you're going to sell, all those sorts of things that come with that. And again, looking at the most efficient way to manage the airport. As council's aware, each year in your budget, you have $25,000 that you contribute towards airport operations. That is contributed to the town of Three Hills, who is the manager of the airport. The major user of the airport is Prairie College and their flight school, which is operated by MAF. And so dealing with those entities, wanting to see if there is a beneficial partnership that can occur between the three. In those discussions, we believe that there's an opportunity. We can't guarantee what the outcome of that is, but we think there's an opportunity and something worth trying. And that's the program that you see in front of you. And what we proposed was looking at creating a staff position, likely through Prairie College, that would provide a couple of different resources out at the airport. One, additional on-site management of the airport. The second one would be more of a marketing and an event thing. So it is a weird couple of weird skill sets to combine into one. But what we're looking at is somebody with the understanding of that airport service or providing that would be tapped into the aviation community, which is ultimately the group of people that we want to attract to events that we would put on. When we looked at that from the county's perspective, anything that can contribute to the financial well-being of the airport that isn't directly coming from the county, we think is a good thing. We put in $25,000 right now. That realistically, there's nothing being put towards the airport by any party, I believe, that is regarding replacement. So whether that's the hangar, the runway, lighting, all those sorts of things, those are other costs that are out there. So when we went from that and we looked at the strategic plan, and particularly in that realm of economic development and promotion of our local whether it's agritourism or food production, those sorts of things, we said, hey, we wonder if there's something here that we could potentially drive in terms of bringing people from outside the region in at the airport to attend country markets or to work in partnership with some of our local tourism providers, that they could run fly-in events, which would drive not only touches at the airport and potential fuel sales and things like that, but could also drive business for some of our local producers. And what we talked about was having a trial project where each party would contribute an equal amount of funding. So our $10,000 that we're proposing here would be matched by the town and by Prairie. And we would start this position. We would look to probably initiate it in the fall so that they could have the winter season to do planning, with the intent we'd actually start stuff happening in the spring, summer. So that's the timing that we came up with. We initially did look at getting this in place for 2023, but at the point the discussions were happening and trying to get it hired, we would essentially left the individual with really no time to put these events together or to plan. And we said we felt it would be better to wait so that they actually had the planning and we can ensure that the events were well done, instead of trying to cram them through. What we hope to see from this is if we can drive additional traffic to the airport, and to see if we can drive additional business to some of our local producers or tourism operators. And if it's determined that we can do those things, you'll likely see us come back and say, let's continue, let's keep going, and see how we can build it up. If it's determined that those things are not happening, then we take a look at the program and say, well, should it continue at all? We do recognize from looking at other airports that were in similar situations to ours here, that getting them built up or getting them to a cost recovery is not necessarily a one-year project. Another airport in I'll call it our region, that we looked at as a model for this, really took about 4 years to get to the point that they're happy with where they're at now. We recognize that there are some deficiencies at the airport in terms of its facilities. But again, those are going to be hard. Those are harder to address when you don't have those other revenue sources come in, other than coming back to us in the town and Prairie and asking for more money, right? So if we can drive those uses or those sales, that should help alleviate that. But again, this is a project to see if this idea bears fruit. If it does, I think council can anticipate us coming back to asking to continue it, which of course would include continuing the funding beyond what's here. Once that position's in place, I don't think it's out of, we haven't talked about it specifically yet. I wouldn't be surprised if there was a small ask in terms of doing some of the marketing for that. So some of it, you know, we can use social media, or the person in the position can use social media and do some things like that. But there might be other things where there's a bit more required. Again, those are unknowns right now, but we don't see that being significant. So really this is to get the position up and running and to see what it can do, and to verify if it can generate traffic at the airport, and if it can produce additional commerce for our local producers and tourism operators. So that again, we'll see how many of our local businesses are maybe interested in something like this. It could include things like holding a country market or two out at the airport. So it'd basically be a fly-in country market that our local businesses could sell goods at, right? From that, we'd be able to determine, you know, are they making sales? Is there even interest from the business community in participating in an event like that? You know, those types of considerations. And then we'd evaluate what comes out of that and make a determination from there whether we'd say we should keep going and further this program, or we're not seeing any tangible results. So now we know, and maybe it's run its course. So that is the program. The funding for this, council has approved in your operating budget block funding for strategic initiatives in terms of developing our agritourism and local food production. Those are strategic planning items that council's identified. So we've said that makes sense to take that from there and tying this back to forwarding council's strategic plan. So there is funding in there. We would not require any additional funding at this time to do this. Beyond that, there will be some staff time required. Obviously, the discussions around developing there's a draft job description, but finalizing that, working with that individual to make some of those business contacts and things like that, there will be some staff time that we'll have to put into this. We feel that can be absorbed within our current operations.
Okay, thank you for that. Are there any questions or comments?
I'm just gonna,
Councillor Penner.
I just have a comment. I'm actually looking really forward to seeing how this partnership works, because this has been something we've talked about for years, and because really in the past, a few years back, it hasn't been run like we as a county would like to have seen it, some aspects of it. So I'm really looking forward and hoping that this really helps out and build the traffic that comes through our airport. So I'm looking forward to the 12-month trial and possibly an extension.
Okay, thank you for that. Any other comments, questions? If not, what's the wish of council? Councillor Penner.
I'll make the motion then that council authorize the use of $10,000 from the 2023 operating budget strategic initiatives for a regional economic development project at the Three Hills Airport in partnership with the town of Three Hills and Prairie College.
Okay, so we have a motion to enter into this partnership with Three Hills and Prairie College and authorize the use of $10,000 towards it. Economic development is important, and an airport is very important to that. So any other questions, discussions? Councillor Christie.
Just a comment, I really appreciate the collaboration of the three groups, and I think that gives it potential. So,
okay, thank you for that. Any other comments, discussion? Seeing none, I'm going to ask the question. All those in favor of the motion? And that's carried unanimously. Thank you very much. All right, we are on now to disposition of delegation and public hearing business. And we had the one delegation this morning, which was the Kneehill Regional Family and Community Support Services. Ms. Jackson Berry, who presented us her usual enthusiastic and informative presentation. So in order to deal with this, we just need a motion to receive for information the Kneehill Regional Family and Community Support Services Annual Report. Councillor Cunningham.
I move that council receive for information the Kneehill Regional Family and Community Support Services Annual Report and Presentation.
Okay, any discussion, comment?
Yep.
Councillor Penner.
I really appreciate when Ms. Jackson Berry comes to us and does this, because a lot of it pertains to the municipalities, not necessarily the county as a whole. So I love hearing what's actually happening in the whole area.
Okay, thank you for that. Any other comments, discussion? If not, all those in favor of the motion? Okay, so that's carried unanimously. Thank you. So our next items are council and committee reports. 9.1 Marigold, 9.2 Kneehill Housing, and 9.3 Police Advisory. And they're all coming from you, Councillor Cunningham. So, please,
Get away.
take it away.
And I did forget my computer glasses today, so you'll have to excuse me while I hold this to my face, so. So just a belated, I wanted to say thank you to Councillor McGee and Councillor Phobes for allowing me to be the alternate to the alternate at the Marigold Library meeting in April. It was just a really neat perspective for me to see the building, beautiful building there, and watch and learn how their meetings function. It's a very large group, and they function very well, and it was just really neat to see, very efficient. So just wanted to say belated thank you for that. Just one last plug for the RCMP Youth Camp. As I mentioned before, the deadline's been extended to June 15th. It is open to all areas of the county, all detachment areas. Yeah. And also just wanted to say congratulations on 150 years for RCMP in Canada. And Councillor Phobes and I were able to take in the Golden Hills Lodge street hockey game on Saturday, road hockey game. It was great, wonderful barbecue lunch, slushies. Councillor Phobes and I did end up in the penalty box, literally, but I can assure our CEO that there was no bench clearing brawls or anything like that. It was very Calgary-Edmonton focused, and I have to say that Calgary came out the clear winner, so thanks for that. Yeah, so, yeah. No, not biased, it's just the truth, so, yeah. And just want to say a quick thanks to the Kneehill County mowing crew, who on very last minute did some mowing out at the alumni cemetery for a special ceremony. So it was really short notice. So just quick thanks to them for doing that for us.
Thank you. Covered a lot of ground in a very short period of time. And have to say, no surprise in the fact that the two of you ended up in the penalty box. But yeah, together, that was amazing. So, Councillor Phobes, you wanted to comment on that, or?
Well, once they let me out, I did become the ref and put Mayor Wilderman in the penalty box for goalie interference.
Wilderman.
Yeah.
Yes. That doesn't surprise me either, so. It's good to have fun, right? And it's important to do that and to recognize those celebrations. So thank you, Councillor Cunningham, for those informative reports, and it's much appreciated. It's good to see that there's a big organization like Marigold, for instance, with lots and lots of people participating in that and run an organization and a meeting well, so. And thank you again for the reminder about the RCMP summer camp and the fact that it's now available to all residents within Kneehill County. And the deadline is June 15th. Okay. All right, so we would need a motion to receive for information those reports. Councillor Phobes.
So moved.
Okay, so we have a motion to, that council receive for information, the council follow up. Oh, no, the councilor reports, thank you. I'm getting ahead of myself. Council and committee reports as presented. All those in favor? And that is carried. Thank you, unanimously. So we're at 10.0, which is council follow-up action list. And we received an updated report earlier today with some dates and times and places on it. Is there any questions or comments coming from that? Councillor Forbes.
I just have one. Where are we at with the 2023 branding program since it is now up and running?
Thank you, through the chair. We still currently have stock that the campground is selling. Unfortunately, we haven't found a way to sell it appropriately at the parking lot area, so we're still looking at options of forward-facing, but we're in the progress of trying to develop the program and see what further opportunities there are. But there is merchandise, from what I understand, at the campground.
Councillor Cunningham.
Just wondering if I can get an update on the Three Hills East Water. I know the surveys closed in April and there was talk about coming back with kind of the results of that in June, which I have passed on to ratepayers that are asking. So just wondering if we have a date hammered out for when that will be presented in June.
Sure, thank you. Through the chair, correct, the survey closed on April 10th. We received, I should say we had about 39 responses that didn't respond to the survey. So we've been following up with those 39 different residences. We got contact with majority of them. 10 of them we didn't actually have contact numbers for. We've gone through a few different ways and aren't able to obtain those phone numbers. They did get the mail out. We have the mailing address for that. So they did receive the survey request. So from those call-outs, after we've received contact with as much as we can, we have 11 paper surveys that have gone out now. We've given the deadline for all paper surveys, second deadline now, for June 2nd, so the end of this week. So once we receive those final copies, we'll tabulate everything together. The intent is that the presentation comes back to council on June 27th.
Okay, so that's moved now a little further into June. I think originally we had talked about earlier June. So long as we have a date, that's the important thing. Because when people ask, then you can respond. Thank you.
Yes.
And I know this one's not on our council action items thing, but it was in our budget. I'm just wondering where we are as far as the Huxley sewer inspection review, whatever we want to call that.
Right, sure, the Huxley wastewater assessment.
Thank you.
Yeah, that project has gone out for tender as we speak right now for requests for proposals. So we have it sent out for our engineering firms to respond. The deadline for them is June 16th. So we'll have them received by June 16th, and we'll do a analysis of that and come back with a recommendation.
Okay, thank you for that. Any other questions regarding the council action items? Okay, if not, Councillor Christie.
I'll move the council on action list as information or as presented.
Okay, so we have a motion to receive the council follow-up action list as presented. All those in favor? And that is carried unanimously. Thank you. All right, now we are at 11.0, which is closed session. We have two items for closed session: third-party business, section 16, and local public body confidence, section 23. So I would need a motion to go into closed session. Councillor Cunningham? So we have a motion to go to closed session. All those in favor? And that is carried unanimously. Thank you. Okay, so we had a motion to return to open council at 11:49. We have recessed to allow the return of the public. And at 11:51, we are going to resume our council meeting. So we have a motion to make from the closed session. That's direction to administration, so somebody care to make that motion? Councillor Phobes.
I move that council direct administration to hold a public engagement session for the Ron Gore overlay project.
Okay, so we're going to hold a public engagement session for the Gore Road overlay project, and any discussion? All those in favor? Okay, and that's carried unanimously. And since there's no other business to be conducted, I'm going to adjourn the meeting at 11:52.